Prepare yourself for an adventure like no other.
Oh my God, I didn't recognize you. You are that world-famous traveler and explorer. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Iguano Joe.
Hello.
Well, hi.
Name's Bruce.
I'm Dory, and this is...
You don't need to know. I'm nobody, really.
And now, I present to you His Majesty
WDW Radio, your information station.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to the WDW Radio Show, your Walt Disney World information station. I am your host, Lou Mangello, and this is show number 656, and together we're going to celebrate the magic of the Disney parks, movies, people, and more here on the podcast, my weekly live video on Facebook, community, videos, books, blog, and more. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and find everything else at WDWRadio.com. Garner Holt went from dreamer to doer as a fateful trip to Disneyland as a child led him to his parents' garage and eventually to become the largest creator of animatronics in the world. His story is as fascinating as his work, and he shares not just his inspiring personal journey, but his work for Disney, and even some of the lessons you, and maybe your kids, can take away as well. I'll then share our Disney Trivia Question of the Week and more updates at the end of the show, so sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of the WDW Radio Show. I'm going to work there one day. That line, or some derivation of it, has been spoken by children as far back as anyone can remember. And many times, those dreamers become doers and make good on their promises to themselves. And every so often, that dreamer and doer becomes a differentiator, as is the case with my next guest, whose work has been seen and enjoyed by millions of people around the world in Disney parks all over the globe. He is Garner Holt, founder and head of Garner Holt Productions, the world's largest animatronics company, and he helps bring the magic to life in the Disney parks and other themed entertainment attractions. And you have been a Garner Holt fan. You just might not have realized it yet. And I'd love to welcome Garner Holt to the show.
Hi, how you doing? Good to be here.
It is great to meet you finally again. When I said that I think we're all Garner Holt fans, we just don't realize it. I absolutely have been. And look, I love a good comic book origin story, and yours is really remarkable to me, not just because you literally did say, I'm going to do that someday at a very, very young age, but you started making good on that promise to yourself right away. So if you can, share your Garner Holt origin story with us.
Well, I kind of had tunnel vision when I saw Disneyland. I just knew what I wanted to do the rest of my life. I wanted to do those kind of things. It all basically started when I was growing up as a child. My parents had, and my whole family was in the horse business. My uncles and parents, they had riding stables and they had horses and everything else. And I was on the back of a horse from, moments after I was born until probably 10 years old. And they wanted me to continue in the horse business as a veterinarian, but they basically, I think I burned out on horsing because I was on them so much. And during all of that, I used to watch Munsters. I used to watch all the horror movies at night with my friends, Frankenstein and all the Universal monsters and everything. And so I kind of wanted to have the Munsters house. So we kind of started tinkering, my friends and I, with a little haunted house in the backyard. And then one day on Sunday on a channel, on television channel, there was a Disney program, The World of Color, and they had a tour of the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. And I'd never heard of such a thing. I never knew it existed. And I still remember to this day, running in my parents' room and saying, Mom, Dad, there's this Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. I want to go see it. So I talked them into taking me to Disneyland. And they did, and that was a fatal mistake for people that wanted me to be a horseman, because at that point on the way home, I told them, I said, I want to build a haunted mansion. I want to build the things that I see at Disneyland. And, that's what I want to do the rest of my life, and they kind of patted me on the head, but, I never looked back. It just never went in any other direction.
But your parents, thankfully so, very much indulge you, not just by taking you, to Kmart and buying you the Haunted Mansion album, but you literally set up shop at home. And describe what that was, where in your house it was, and your parents' reaction to actually sort of making good very quickly on the promise that you made in the car ride home.
Well, I started inventing things. I started building little things in the garage. I started on a card table in the garage, and then I had my whole bedroom, of course, and I basically set it up like a little shop. And I got a toolbox from my dad, and I would start tinkering, and I started tinkering with little hinges and wood pieces and making little things. I made my mom a little animated pumpkin that she took to work for Halloween, for a Halloween contest, and we won the contest. She'd push a button and the hat opened up and it said Happy Halloween and everything. So I started tinkering with things really small. And, my parents just seemed to, they seemed to go along with the fact that I was busy doing things that were, looked like I was learning. And, I still dabbled with the animals, and that I had a, little petting zoo and a couple of things that I created that in a reptile museum, because I used to collect reptiles. And so I had animals and things, but we just continued to tinker, and things got more and more elaborate, and the haunted house just got more and more elaborate to the point where it was, a pretty good little haunted house. And I would have neighborhood kids pay to come through it and that type of thing. So it was got pretty successful at that point.
What I think is really interesting, just sort of put a pin in this for a second, is let's sort of give context. This is the early 1970s. There is no YouTube. You don't have angel investors coming in and giving you money to start doing this. I mean, you're literally figuring it out on your own. You're Tony Stark in a cave, right? You're sort of using scraps to build these things and make you're using bicycle pumps and things like that to create special effects.
That's correct. And my first animated figure that I built, the Uncle Sam figure I built in high school for my bicentennial, 1976, when I was 15, I took a hacksaw and sawed metal off my fence posts in my dad's backyard, that were the part of the frame of the figure. So, I mean, I really did use scrap metal and hinges, door hinges, crazy things like that to build my figure, so it was quite a struggle. I didn't have a lot of money. I just had an allowance, and I, do things. I used to exercise the horses from my dad, and he'd give me $5 every time I do that. So I had a way to make some money, a little bit, that I could buy some parts. And I would go down to an aircraft surplus place, and I found out that, how the figures work with air cylinders and things like that. And I found an aircraft place that I could buy cheap, used old parts from World War II planes and stuff like that,
I am absolutely in awe of not just the entrepreneurial spirit, but the foresight and the thought to sort of source parts and products for these different places. And let's be clear, this haunted house that you built was not just, a figure that jumped out at you in your garage. You literally built, something in your backyard that a few hundred people come. And then the next year, right, you're actually hired by the mall in San Bernardino to build another haunted house. And this time you actually repurposed a trailer, right?
Yeah, they came to me and said, could I build one for them? And I thought, well, how could I possibly work on this thing the whole year? Because I figured I needed a bunch of time. My friends and I would need time to put something together. So I thought, well, if I could have a trailer and pull it into the mall. So I found an old burned out construction trailer, one that had burned on the inside, but still looked good on the outside. And it was, I bought it for $400. So I had about $1,000 budget to do the whole haunted house, and some seed money from my parents and some of the money that I'd made on my other haunted house and some of the products that I'd sold. So probably $1,000-1,200. So I would scrounge old plywood and I'd make things and paint them, and little gizmos that would work, electrical stuff that I would find parts at the TV store, and I'd make little gadgets and things that would pop up and scream, and old tape recorders I get at the swap meet, I'd play, I'd do screams on them and I'd have them play back and it would make sounds, stuff like that. So it was kind of a rickety thing, but it worked, and we pulled it. My dad, had a pickup because he was a horseman, so he pulled the trailer into the mall, and I rented it to the mall for like 5 days, 6 days or something like that. So that was the very beginnings of getting paid as a company. That was, that's when I started calling it Garner Holt Productions, because that was the very beginnings of getting paid to build a haunted house,
Right. So you have this, Garner Holt, and I love the fact that you branded it with your name from day one. Brilliant. It was always Garner Holt's Haunted House of Mystery. But, haunted houses are not a 365-day-a-year industry. But what you were able to do, around Halloween time in order to make... Most kids would start a lemonade stand. They would sell baseball cards. They would sort of, do things at garage sales. You actually made and sold a product that nobody never realized that they needed, but were able to fund your projects this way.
Well, what was interesting is that people from the stores at the mall that I was in San Bernardino, some of the other stores, they got a hold of me from like the Mall of Orange in Orange County and a couple other places. And they said, oh, well, our satellite stores have seen that you have a great haunted house. Could you build one for our mall? So it started branching out into malls, several malls. So, I was doing multiple haunted houses at the same time. So we would work all during the year. When I say we, that would be my friends and everybody I could recruit. Mostly volunteers because I didn't have enough money to pay them, maybe pizza now and then. But everybody got a kick out of doing it. So, so it kind of grew that way a little bit. And, that's around that same time, that's when I built my first Uncle Sam figure, my first animatronic figure, that was my first attempt. And
again, instead of the lemonade stand and cards, you also, in addition to sort of creating these experiential areas for people to come to, were you also making and selling severed hands in order to sort of help fund some of these projects?
Well, because I was so crazy about building, I was able to get, some mannequin hands and things, and I molded them and I made rubber hands. And, this is back in the 70s. Nobody else was doing this. You can look in a, magazine and find, monster parts and, millions of things right now, but there was really nothing then. And very little, just masks, like Dawn Post masks, and things like that. So a friend of mine came and said, we're going to the beach. And so I grabbed one of my hands. I thought, I'll take one of these for a gag, So we went to Oceanside and we're hanging on the beach. And I buried one of the hands in the sand and had it sticking out of the sand. And we called the lifeguards. And of course, it turned into this huge ruckus and the police showed up and everything else. And it was a big thing. And everybody thought it was a big gag. So I thought, wow, there's something here, So I put it in a kid's monster magazine that I used to buy called Fangoria. And I bought a little ad and I called it the Severed Hand. And it was, about up to the wrist with a little bloody stump on the end of it. And I sold them thousands and thousands of them all over the world. Literally, I had them. People buying them like crazy. And that helped keep the business, that helped really keep the lights on,
Right. Because you decide at the ripe old age of 16 to, validate this. You make it a real company. You're the only employee other than your mom and your friends volunteering. But very quickly, you sort of go from, making these things in the garage to start actually getting some quote unquote real work from larger venues in places like Las Vegas, which eventually lead to you literally creating Chuck E. Cheese.
Well, yeah, there was a couple big, milestones there, but yeah, I basically started, eventually I did other other holiday things like, Christmas display things and things like that. I got into that a little bit. So it kind of grew. And then I built a character that was called Wendell the Unicycle Rider. And I spent, over a year building it in my garage. And I thought that if I had to break into the business, I had to have something that nobody had ever seen before, something really shocking that, so I developed this, which is kind of like a mechanical magic trick. It made it look like a figure was riding a unicycle with no visible means of support. You can see it on YouTube if you put up Garner Holt, Wendell Unicycle Rider. And that's what I took a film of that I took to the first potential theme park job that I could get in Las Vegas when they were building a park there at MGM Grand. It's no longer there. It was there for maybe 12 years. But I finagled my way, which wasn't easy, into seeing the chairman of the board of the park and showed him the tape. And he agreed that if somebody could build that, they could probably build the figures for the largest ride that they had there. And I'd never built a thing for a theme park. I'd never been in a theme building. I never had a job like that. I never had it was like I was starting from zero. Like you say, there's no internet, no YouTube, no Google, or, you just had to find out all this stuff on your own, how to do it.
And how do you get to Chuck E. Cheese? And not one Chuck E. Cheese, but many Chuck E. Cheese clones.
Well, it grew up as a company, it grew slowly, and started getting some employees here and there. And I started, because of the job at MGM, I got some things at Knott's, and I started getting, smaller jobs here and there, and they got kind of bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden, I started to get a little bit of a reputation, and the Chuck E. Cheese people wanted to change their concept. They had a stage that had 5 characters on it that were all fairly simple, and they wanted to hone it down to one character that was a complex character that was, more Disney-like, and that was called the Studio C project. And they had kind of a competition with the existing animatronic companies in the day. There was probably 4 or 5 companies, all of which had much more experience than I did. And but I was in there, and I did a design for them. I did a prototype, a design, and the design of how it looked on the outside versus, and also the inside, the mechanical, the functions. Came up with a real good price and everything else. And basically, I won the competition. They kind of put it out there as kind of a competition to see who could do the best design, and I won, which was great. And so from that point, I did the first prototype, took it to Texas and put it in their test store, and they looked at it and said, "This is great." So ended up doing 546, I believe, Chuck E. Cheese shows worldwide because of that. And that was a big job for 20 years or so.
And so tell the story of how you get to eventually where it is that you want to be, which is Disney, and specifically capturing the attention of some very notable folks over at WED Enterprises.
Well, in the very beginning, by that point, I had already been talking to Imagineering because I sent a tape of my Uncle Sam when I was literally in high school still, that I built in the garage, and they sent out some of their top people, one of which was Wavell Rogers, the father of Disney Animatronics. And they looked at the Uncle Sam, and they, so they started talking to me about employment at Disney. They would send out their staffing people, and they'd come out to all my haunted houses. And I thought that I had a job there, and that was like my dream. That was my dream. I had the little business, but I really wanted to work for them. And it never worked out that I became an employee there, because they said that I would need a college education, I had tested out of high school in my junior year, so I didn't go to my senior year because I tested out. And, they said, well, you need a better education. You need to do this and this and this. And I was a horrible student. So I thought, well, I'm going to try to get my company going. And if it doesn't work, then I'll go back to school. The company started rolling along, and they started seeing the things that I did in theme parks, all over other than theirs. So I started getting jobs with them for smaller projects, and led up to some figures for parade floats, and figures got more and more elaborate until the day that they came to me to do the Haunted Mansion Holiday Show, which was, unbelievable, because that was the Haunted Mansion I dreamed of building when I was a kid. And now I get to literally tear the whole Haunted Mansion apart and build animatronics for the whole place, along with sets and scenery. We did, there was, some other props that others did, but we did most of it, the Christmas tree and the Pumpkin Mountain and all the figures that were in there, and Oogie Boogie and the whole sets at the end. And it was crazy. It was like surreal. It was like living a dream that, here's the place I dreamed about as a kid. And now I get to go in there and change the whole thing,
And I can't imagine you get this call and they say that we want you to come in and work on the Haunted Mansion. And I can imagine it's incredibly exciting and emotional, but just talk to me for a second about that moment. The moment that you were there in Disneyland and they open up the door and you walk in and you're backstage at the place where I'm choked up for you, like all these years later, because I can't imagine what that must have felt like. And just, forgetting just the award of getting that, but just the excitement of that 14-year-old kid.
Well, yeah, I think back in where it started, and, what the Haunted Mansion meant to me. At that point, I'd ridden it a million times, and I, tried to figure out everything. And, it just being able to basically get handed the keys and say, here, this is pre 9/11. And it was like, everything was really kind of lax. And it's, I could just drive my car right in and park behind the place and walk in and go underneath and start working on, it was surreal. It was basically, all of my staff that I had at the time, we would, be working in there. Working with the Disney people, of course, but it was crazy. It was very emotional in the beginning. It was very, it's kind of like fulfilling a dream come true. And it's like everything that you've ever strived for is your entire life. And then all of a sudden it happens. It's amazing,
Right. And Wathel Rogers comes to your house, but even when you start working with Disney, they don't sort of just leave you on your own. And you actually received some mentorship from another legend, Bob Gurr, who obviously had helped work on creating great moments with Mr. Lincoln. Talk to me about meeting Bob and working with Bob and that relationship with him.
Well, people ask me about how the business started and what my strategy is in life and business and everything. And, you can sit around and think about things, and you can think about opportunities. You can think about it to the point where it's like, oh, okay, well, that'd be great. But then the next day you just go off and you don't do it. When I would think of things, I jump at everything. And I still am like that. I just jump at everything. And one day I'm sitting there reading something in my office, and something pops up about this man named Bob Gurr. This was 30 years ago or whatever. And, I'm reading about him, and I'm like, dang, this is somebody I need to talk to. So I basically looked in the phone book, or called LA, 411, and got his number. He was listed in the phone book, and I called him up and I said, hi, my name is Garner Holt. I'm starting a animatronics company. I'm just a little pipsqueak, and you're a legend in the business. And, I thought to myself, there are two things that are going to happen. He's either going to tell me to get lost and, I don't have time to talk to you, or he's going to talk to me. So we talked for about 2 hours, and the next thing he was in my shop. And the next thing we were working on some projects together. And the next thing after that, here we are 30 years later, and we're good friends, so you just got to jump at stuff. When you think of stuff, you got to take a stab, don't worry about whether it's going to work or not, just go with it and make it happen,
I love every part of that story.
Have so many things I've done have evolved that way. Yeah. It's like, I'll think of something driving in the car, and I'm like, the next day I'm on the phone hooking up with people and trying to make this all work. And sometimes it doesn't work. Yeah, okay, fine. But out of a bunch of tries, you'll get a few that do.
And the fact that you created opportunity for yourself instead of waiting for it to be handed to you, I applaud, especially at such a young age. So you come.
My mom used to tell me. My mom had a saying, and it's a very simple saying, and she used to tell me this all the time. I'd sit there on the couch on a Saturday night and wish that I had a date, and she would walk by me and she'd point at me and she'd say, "Garner, if you do nothing, nothing will happen." And she'd walk away, and she'd say that to me all the time. If you do nothing, nothing will happen. And that's stuck with me, all my life.
I think a lot of our moms are cut from the same cloth. They all got that same handbook with phrases like that. But it's those simple things that stick with us and obviously pay. You don't realize it when she says it, but decades later you see the dividends that you reap as a result from it. So you come in and you work on a classic attraction like Haunted Mansion. This is the first of many projects that you have with Disney, and you touch so many different, not just attractions, but eras in Disney, because it's not just classics like the Haunted Mansion. It's Tiki Room, it's Jungle Cruise, it's Small World. Is there any sort of almost additional pressure when you walk in because you understand the gravity and the importance and the emotion of the attractions that you're working on to millions of people?
Big time. Yeah. You want to do, we always, the world nowadays with corporations and red tape and bureaucracy and legal and everything else, corporations are corporations. But I always wanted to do things, and I continue to want to do things the way I think they did them in the old days, like kind of how Walt would have wanted to see it done, and, that kind of thing. And I just like having the feeling that, we kind of still have an old fashioned feel of the way that we do things. And sometimes after you weed through all the red tape and everything, you can still get stuff done, but you put your heart and soul into building something the way, it should be built. And sometimes customers will come to us and they can only afford a certain amount, and we'll think to ourselves, you can't have this figure without this function, and you couldn't afford this function, but we're going to put it in anyways. You know what I mean? Because it just needs it, So it's not all about money. It's not all about, everything is it's more looking at it from the standpoint of what's right, what looks good, what's good show. But it's again, surreal to step into classic attractions and get to work on them, like Small World and other things. And, Tiki Room, we've replaced, a lot of birds in the Tiki Room, and, Jungle Cruise and the Abominable Snowman in the Matterhorn and the Phantasmic Dragon and, all the other attractions and everything. It's been a real interesting ride. It's, and the cool thing about it is that if I'd have been an Imagineer, I wouldn't have been nearly as happy, because they would work for years on one project. And, I've done dozens and dozens of projects, but then not again just for Disney, but for the biggest theme parks in the world. We've got more animatronics in Universal than anybody ever did. And things like Efteling and Europa Park in Europe, where we have animation of the two biggest parks in Europe, and Knott's, all the Cedar Fair stuff. I mean, we're everywhere, and it's really gratifying to be able to have had the flexibility and the ability to be involved in all of these really cool attractions, like at Knott's, the mine ride and the log ride. We redid those completely, and I used to ride the mine ride on my dad's lap, when I was a kid. And now, another surreal moment is when I'm completely redoing the entire mine ride with figures and show and everything else and sound, and this is crazy. It's so it goes beyond Disneyland.
As you were talking about the Disney attractions, I really love something that you said, because although you may not have never worn a name tag from Imagineering, there's a lot of Disney in Garner Holt, and I really love and appreciate the fact that you mentioned Walt specifically, and I think in the back of your mind, you understood the importance of what it was that you were working on. And while you may have never met Walt the man, you also understood the importance of the quality and the impact it was going to have on people that were there.
You see, so many people do everything for the almighty dollar. And, if I could have afforded it, I would have worked on all these attractions for free. That's how meaningful they are to me. And that's what I care about Disney and the history and everything else. I mean, but if I'd have been, wealthy, I would have just, I practically have done it for free, because it's so important to me. I grew up with all these attractions as a child. And, all of this is very, it's my life. It's really, it really truly is my life. And when the Imagineering wouldn't hire me, I made my own Imagineering. So that just, goes to show you that, if you're really determined, you can circumvent what normal thinking is and do what you want to do and make yourself happy that way.
And creating opportunity from adversity and not getting hired by the Imagineering was the best thing that ever happened to you. You didn't realize it at the time, but it was.
Exactly. I say that to people all the time. That's the best thing that ever happened. I was devastated when I realized it wasn't going to happen. I was depressed for 6 months, and I didn't realize that was the best thing that could have happened. You know what I mean? And I think I wish I could instill that in others, that get so devastated by things when they don't work out. And then later on, it turns out that, that was the best thing that could happen to them.
Right. It's Walt and Mortimer, right? You may not realize it when it happens, but a kick in the teeth might be the best thing that could ever happen to you is a quote attributed to Walt. And that's exactly what you did. And once you sort of realize that and you flip the switch, you sort of, pulled up your pants and went on to do it yourself and created attractions and touch attractions, not just with some of the classics, but, dark rides like Monsters, Inc. and Finding Nemo and Little Mermaid and the Submarine Voyage. But you also worked on, I'm sorry? Radiator Springs, right? And as well as some of the ones that are, when I say they're huge and important, not just sort of emotionally huge and important, but huge in terms of scale too, because you worked on the Dragon for Fantasmic in Disneyland and the Ursula Sea Witch in the Under the Sea show in Tokyo Disney Sea.
We even put giant meteors in Space Mountain. I mean, we've worked in things that people are surprised that we worked in,
Yeah, and you've made literally thousands of figures and hundreds of animatronics for Disney and theme parks, as well as other special effects as well. You've been recognized a number of times from the TEA, Themed Entertainment Association, and a number of different awards, including from things like Disneyana. But as time goes on, technology continues to improve and need to be adapted to. And, not just from a technical perspective, but from the guest satisfaction and expectation perspective, you need to evolve as well. Talk to me a little bit about the process of evolution and, like Disney, this continuous improvement that has to take place, because the animatronics that you are developing now, and I've seen some video of some of the faces that you've created that, at first glance, if you didn't tell me that they weren't human, I almost wouldn't believe it, because you seem to have really almost mastered some of the more challenging parts, like the eyes and the lips and the mouth movements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, the difficulty with all of that. See, all of that expressive head stuff that we did, that was all self-driven. We did all that ourselves in a sense. And, unfortunately, so much of what we do for customers, it's based on their budgets, and, doesn't matter how big the park is, they have a budget and they will limit things. And it's very seldom do they come out and say, okay, well, here's a check, go make something really amazing that nobody's ever done. Animatronics and things we do are very labor intensive, and they're very part intensive. And very, very expensive and the one-off machines that have never been done before. And so, we wish that we could do more R&D, more development. A lot of times we'll be working with an attraction builder and they'll say, here's a scene, what can we do here? And we'll try to come up with ways that we can say, okay, well, let's not just have, something standing there strumming a guitar, let's have something really exciting, really cool, And Disney's done that, on their own in the past. They have the sword fighters, in the Pirates of the Caribbean and in Europe. And, they've done things with the Na'vi and all of that. They've kind of continued to advance the art. And we do too, I don't have the budgets that Disney R&D does, but we have our own R&D department where we try to continue to develop, animatronics of the future and make it better and more realistic and come up with, we've got a figure that we're building out there right now that is going to be, I think, pretty amazing. It's got a lot of capability and does things that nobody's ever seen a figure do. And we always try to push the envelope, raise the bar, make things that are, kind of like GM making concept car. It's like, here's something really, really cool. And then it attracts the customers. And then they say, wow, if you can do, kind of like the old days, it's like, wow, if you can do that, do something really cool like that for us, So, we just plug along, but it is a business and we do have to keep the lights on, so we have to get customers. And a lot of times we're doing crazy stuff. It's like, oh, this isn't very exciting, but it's got a paycheck attached to it,
Well, and sometimes those projects that maybe are not at Disney, you never know where inspiration might come from. So part of this idea of taking these ultra realistic animatronics to the next level came not from necessarily just working at places like Disney or Universal, but actually came, more than a decade ago when you were working with the military, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we do work on animatronics that are outside of the theme parks. I mean, we do some things with medical. We do things with military, which you just mentioned, which basically is training simulators. So you imagine the Pirates of the Caribbean, and you imagine if instead of just riding through it on a boat, you had to get off the boat and walk around and sneak around, and the pirates are really trying to kill you and you were really trying to kill them, if instead of the pirate in the Caribbean, you're in Afghanistan or something, And so we did simulator work that would train our soldiers before they would go over, take these kids and hand them a gun and say, here, they would go in these things and learn a lot of the tricks that get pulled on them and, using animatronics, because they were, prior to our animatronics, they would just see films and things. But, in the animatronics, they were afraid of the animatronics, just like they were real people, because they didn't know what they could do. They knew they would do things. I mean, we had animatronics that could shoot you. We had animatronics that could throw a grenade at you. We had ones that would pull a gun or a knife on you. We had them where they would fall, if you shot them, they'd fall over dead, and you could go check them and make sure they're dead. And then after you walk away, they'd stand back up and get ready for the next group. So we've learned a lot with expressive animatronics and specialty animatronics, for military,
Well, and I think that leads to, what's next. What does the future of animatronics look like? Because I think from a guest perspective, especially sort of the generation behind us, they no longer want sort of that purely passive experience. We're looking for things that are interactive and immersive, and I think even personalized too. What do you see in terms of what the short and long-term future of this technology and some of the things you're working on is?
Well, that's entirely possible right now, so like I mentioned, the Pirates of the Caribbean, just as an example. So, you have these things, these bands that you're putting on your wrists, a magic key or whatever they call, whatever you want to call it. Let's just use that as an example. But, that allows you to be identified and, through, our RFID type thing, and people can, the attraction can know who you are in a sense. So, imagine the days that, they are more interactive. You're floating by the auctioneer, and, he looks down and he points at you in the boat and says, hey, Jimmy, what do you give me for this last? That type of thing. Well, I know they don't have that's PC, not correct anymore. They're not selling the women. How much for this rum? But where they would know your name, they could address you eye to eye, that type of thing. It's just the whole evolution of robotics is rocketing forward right now. You're going to have robots driving you around, everywhere in little things called Teslas, their robots are going to be in everybody's life in a few years. And, hopefully some of these days when you walk into our lobby and check in and talk to the receptionist a while and get ready to move on through the tour, all of a sudden you realize that the receptionist you've been talking to isn't even a real person, So we're going to put a face on a lot of things. We're working on some customers' projects right now that there's some IPs. There's always characters. There's always creatures. There's always, monsters and, space things. And I can't mention any names, but, crazy stuff out there that you see on the screen that need to be turned into real life. And it's how do you turn them into real life and make them totally believable, totally realistic, totally alive. And we do that a lot for our clients. And it's fun, I'm having a blast doing it because it's been my whole life and it's a lot of fun.
Well, and it has been your whole life. And I think that you seem to never have forgotten where you came from. And what I also really appreciate you, Garner, is that you give back by wanting to give opportunities to a new generation of 14-year-old Garner Holts. Just talk to us a little bit about your education through imagination project.
Well, we created a thing called Education Through Imagination. And, how it came about was, I give tours and people would ask for tours all the time and want to come through here and the word would spread. I'd have Cub Scouts and Girl Scouts and college kids and high school kids. And, everybody wanted to take a tour of the place. So we would give them tours and they would light up and they would say, wow, they'd be leaving. They'd say, wow, I want to work here. I'd love to work here someday. Even the doctors and lawyers we take through here, they'd smile and say, I don't want to be a dentist anymore. I want to work here and build toys, And so everybody seemed to really enjoy it. So, I teamed up with a principal at a school that near here that I adopted as a school and that had created a makerspace. And we teamed up and created what's called an animator space, to where it's kind of like a new shop class that you can, there's basically, the old shop classes that I thrived on that really created what I do today in schools. They all kind of went away. There's not metal shop and wood shop and all that stuff in most of the schools anymore. Even a lot of the art classes went away. And so we're creating kind of in a room, a miniature Garner Holt Productions where you have all these machines, laser cutter and vacuum former and a CNC printer or a CNC mill and a rapid prototype printer and a bunch of things. And you can actually make in our classes an animatronic figure, a tiki bird that comes alive and sings and does the whole thing. Wow. You can make it from scratch in this room. And we're putting these in schools all over the place. We've got dozens of them going out to schools that we're building them in schools and even as far away as Florida. And we just won, we've won Edison Award, which for education, and we have, are very excited about, taking this further. And so really, to me, it's basically a way to kind of end, I didn't want to say end my career, but, I've been doing this for 45 years now, and eventually, I'm going to slow down and, not be the in 10 years or so, I didn't want to just be sitting around on a table building tiki birds and end up with a bang that way. I wanted to leave something behind. So I thought, wow, if we could, have a way to where, a million kids could experience the excitement and enjoyment learning about robotics, but in an animatronic form where it includes all the arts and everything else. It's not just like a robotic kit in a classroom. that's just electrical and mechanical. This includes everybody: script writing and voiceover work and sculpting and costuming, and as well as the mechanical and electronics to build a whole figure. We have little miniature human figures that they can build. And so super excited about that. And I'm anxious to see this thing continue to grow. It's snowballing right now, and we're really excited about it. So that'll make me very happy to someday, 20 years from now, if I ever do slow down, I'll be able to look at this and say, wow, this has really culminated in something really cool,
I love the fact that you're thinking about legacy, not just in terms of the figures you leave behind, but the positive impact that you have through education. Although you do know, Garner, that every adult who's listening right now is going, hey, why don't you have this for adults too? Because they would sign up for a class like that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, we do. We are doing this. So basically, we started the Animatronics concept in grade school level, and then we went to middle school, and then we went to high school. But now we're getting our first requests and putting our first Animator spaces in colleges. Technically it is reachable to everybody. And, there are very few of them in colleges right now, just the very beginning of that. But, I hope in a couple of years, you'll see them all over the place,
I'm ready to play Rodney Dangerfield and go back to school just so I can take some of these classes and see, but again, coming full circle, Garner, and you're thinking forward about your legacy and what you leave behind. But when you visit the parks now, do you look at your work and are you able to remember that feeling, that 14-year-old boy's excitement and vision? And are you able to sort of step back and go, I said I was going to work here. I said I was going to make this, and I made this. Like, this is something that I made, and sort of distance yourself from the work and just from a personal, emotional level?
Yeah, sometimes I have to sit back and pinch myself and think, it's been 45 years since I was a kid in high school, but I think to myself once in a while, it's like, how did all this happen? It's like, how did I get here? This is just, it's almost just like a flash, and you're here, and we've got this giant facility, and we've got, another education building across the street, and I've got all these people building all this attraction stuff. And it's like, wow, this is really amazing. And I go to parks. People always say, well, does it ruin the magic for you having built things? Well, no, because what it is that I go to the park, usually formally as a guest once a year now, like to Disneyland. We go and we actually take the guided tour. And the reason we do that is because, you get kind of walk through the place, you kind of get a special treatment, and you kind of get a chance to really not have to worry about zoom around. You kind of relax and look around it and see things the way you want to see them. But I don't look at the stuff that we built. I sit in the boat and look at the people, and I see them react to it, and I like to watch the people's faces when they see things and react to it. And I love to take people who have never been there and watch them react to it, and that's how I get my enjoyment now, is just seeing people enjoy what we do,
It's the perfect answer, because I said earlier that I think there's a lot of Disney and Garner Holt productions. I also think like that's a perfect Walt Disney answer. Like, I think there's a lot of Walt Disney in Garner Holt too. And I mean that to be the compliment that it sounds like. But let's be honest, Garner, I know we're all proud of all of our children equally, and we love them all equally. But is there one figure that you're proud of, or makes you go, wow, or like, yeah, this is it. This is the one that still sort of makes me smile or make me proud?
So I've been asked that before, and I've put a lot of thought into that answer, and it really goes by decade in a sense, or kind of by era. Nothing was more important than my first figure, Uncle Sam, as a kid.
Where is he now? Where's Uncle Sam now?
He's in a crate upstairs. And then, the first figure that I did for the Haunted Mansion, Jack Skellington, that was groundbreaking, to put a classic or a figure a high-end figure in a classic Disney attraction that didn't get built by Disney, by somebody else, had never been done before. And, that wasn't built by Imagineering. And so that was and then the Radiator Springs, that was a milestone. And then the Dragon, that was a huge milestone. So kind of like every decade, it's kind of like there's one. And then Wendell, the unicycle rider. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't have had the first theme park job. So, I can point to milestone figures that all were critical in the development. And then Chuck E. Cheese, I walked through this building. I said the other day, I had a tour the other day, and I was pointing this. I said, we have the first Chuck E. Cheese here that was ever built. And I was showing it to him, and I said, we leave him here as an honorary citizen because thanks to him, I think he paid for this building. And, this giant building we're in. And it's like, thanks a lot, Chucky. You always have a home here, And so all of them are very meaningful to me and very important to me in their own way, but those specific characters, I think, are the milestone characters,
I would say for Walt, it all started with a mouse. It started with Mickey. For you, it started with Wendell, but maybe it really started with Chuck E. Cheese. So it was all started.
Yeah, for some strange reason, the rodents seem to start these businesses.
It's incredibly poetic. And Garner, I will tell you on behalf of myself and my family who has enjoyed your work and your team's work for so many years, I appreciate it. If people want to learn more about you, they can go to GarnerHolt.com or Garner Holt Education through Imagination.com. I'll put both of those links in the show notes. Garner, I love your story as both Disney fan and entrepreneur, and I love and appreciate being able to share it with others. So thank you so much for what you do, as well as for your time today.
Well, thank you. And they can also, if you put Garner Holt into YouTube, there's a whole bunch of stuff, even me as a youngster, and there's a lot of the expressive head stuff and Lincoln and all that. So you see a lot of that kind of stuff on YouTube. But yeah, it's been a real pleasure. It's interesting kind of going over the history and everything, but I'm glad to do it. And I appreciate people like you who are fans that keep the magic going,
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. It's time for our Walt Disney World Trivia Question of the Week, where I invite you to test your knowledge of Walt Disney World's history or see how well you pay attention to the details of what you see, hear, taste, or remember. If you think you know the answer, you can enter for a chance to win a Disney prize package. And this week's trivia contest is once again brought to you by you, because as part of the WDW Radio Nation, you literally help bring every episode of WDW Radio to life. Every live broadcast from the parks, our contests, giveaways, they are all thanks to, because of, for, and really by you. You can find out how you can help the show for as little as $1 a month and get cool exclusive rewards every month, like scavenger hunts, trivia quests, group video calls, access to our private Facebook group, shirts, stickers, monthly care packages from the parks, and much more. I would love and appreciate you being part of the Nation. To find out more, become part of the Nation family, and find out how your optional contribution goes to benefit our Dream Team project, which benefits the Make-A-Wish Foundation of America, you can go to wdwradio.com/support. Now, before we get to this week's question, we're going to go back, review last week's, and select our winner. So last week we were talking about Roy and Walt, but did you know that Walt had another sibling or siblings as well? And your question and challenge last week was to tell me, name all of Walt's brothers and sisters. First, thanks to all of you who entered, got this one correct, and knew that Elias and Flora Disney had not one, not two, not three, but 5 children. Herbert was born in 1888. Raymond was born in 1890. Roy was born in 1893. Walt, obviously in 1901. And then Ruth in 1903. If you had entered and got this correct, congratulations and thank you for playing. I took all the correct entries, randomly selected one, and last week you were once again playing for an exclusive trivia contest prize only WDW Radio pin, keychain, and mystery prize. And last week's winner, randomly selected, is Desiree Bassett. So Desiree, congratulations. I will get your prize packet out to you right away. If you played last week and didn't win, that's okay, because here's your next chance to enter in this week's Walt Disney World Trivia Challenge. So November is Native American Heritage Month, and actually back on show 537, we talked about Native American heritage in the Disney parks and movies with Paul Gowder from powwows.com. It's a really fascinating look at references to Native Americans, not just in Walt Disney World, but beginnings in Disneyland and some of the references and tribes and artwork, as well as look back on their presence in Disney films and connection to Walt Disney himself, as well as some unrealized concepts, attractions, and land. It's a really interesting look at some of the not so well known and unrealized connections between Disney and Native American culture. Again, that's show 537. Anyway, references to Native Americans can be found in a number of places throughout Walt Disney World, including on the Liberty Square riverboat. As we pass an Algonquin Indian village, your captain, Horace Bixby, tells you that this Algonquin Indian village is from what tribe? So this week, tell me, what tribe does Horace Bixby tell you that this Algonquin Indian village is from? And I'll give you a huge hint. You may not necessarily remember the attraction narration, but I guarantee you've heard the name of this tribe before. So you have until Sunday, November 7th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern to go to WDW Radio.com, click on this week's podcast, use the form to enter once again, and you're playing for the pin, the keychain, and the mystery prize. So good luck and have fun. That's going to do it for this week's show. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Garner as much as I did. I'd love to know your answer to our question of the week. As long as we're talking about animatronics, what is your favorite audio animatronic figure in the Disney parks? You can answer this question and be part of the community and conversation by joining the WDW Radio Clubhouse group on Facebook at www.radio.com/clubhouse. You can also connect with me elsewhere on social. I am at Lou Mongello. You can email me, lou@wdwradio.com, if you have a question you want me to answer on an upcoming show, or call the voicemail at 407-900-9391. That's 407-900-WDW1 with an answer to the question of the week, a comment, or just a hello from the parks. I also want to give huge and sincere thanks to every member of the WDW Radio Nation family. I love and appreciate you and your support and your friendship and help, and I love being able to give back to you each and every month. I want to thank some new and longtime members like the McNamara family, Tim, Nick Slate, Katie Hines, and Ed Buskirk. If you want to help the show and get exclusive awards and help our Dream Team project again, go to www.radio.com/support. In addition to the podcast, please don't forget to join us every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, live from the parks as we talk and walk and sometimes ride, or the home studio as we talk about our top 5 live, discuss this week's podcast, our Disney Plus pick of the week, your questions, comments, and more. It's a lot of fun thanks to the incredibly welcoming community that you have helped create. Again, turn on notifications both on the WDW Radio Clubhouse as well as on the WDW Radio page on Facebook so you don't miss a thing. Also, you can join our spoiler support group to talk about all things Marvel. The Eternals is coming out this week. I cannot wait. We literally just got a trailer for the Book of Boba Fett. There's a lot of conversations about some of the Easter eggs going on in this group. Again, just go to www.radio.com/spoilers. And if you know me or have heard the show before, you know that as much as I love connecting with you online, I still believe that nothing beats a handshake and a hug, and events are finally coming back. Go to www.radio.com/events to find out everything we have going on in Walt Disney World, including our next Meet of the Month coming soon. I'll be cheering on the boardwalk for the half marathon this coming Sunday for Wine and Dine weekend. If you go to www.radio.com/cruise, you can find out and come join us for any of our cruises next year and in 2023. We've got our Marvel Day at Sea from Miami in February, our inaugural cruise on the Disney Wish June 20th, our very Merry Time cruise on the Wish December 5th, and our Disney Fantasy 8-night overnight in Bermuda April 15th, 2023. And in just a few weeks, I will be at and live from the House of Mouse Expo, thanks to our friends over at the Main Street Mouse, November 27th and 28th at the Embassy Suites, located just down the road from Walt Disney World. Again, if you go to www.radio.com/House of Mouse, you will find out more. And my Momentum Weekend Workshop, November 13th and 14th, is now officially sold out, but you can email me, lou@wwradio.com, if you want to get on the waiting list. And even if you've been unable to come to Momentum, I'd love to be able to give back to you. I'm so grateful for the opportunity and the life that you've given me. I want to help you individually or your business, your event, or your school. Lots of different ways I can try and do it through speaking, coaching, mastermind group forming, and other events as well. Just go to LouMongello.com for more information. Thanks as always to Mouseman Travel, my official and recommended travel provider for all your vacation planning needs. Whether you're going to a Disney destination or anywhere in the world, you get incredible levels of personal service that comes at no cost to you. You can go visit them and get a free no obligation quote, mousefantravel.com. And as always, my friend, and you are my friend, whether we have met yet or not, all I ask that if you like the show, please help spread the word. How can you do that? Share a link to this or your favorite episode over on social. Tag me at Lou Mongello. Make sure that I see it. Even if you just tell a friend and invite them to listen and subscribe to the show as well. Incredibly appreciated. And if you can, take just a couple of seconds to rate and review the show. It's one of the best ways you can help. I want to thank some recent reviewers like Brum Stew from the United Kingdom. I still think it's cool and amazing that people from around the world listen. This part makes me uncomfortable. It says, Lou the legend. I'll move on. It says, I've been listening now for about 12 months ahead of a planned return to Walt Disney World in January from the United Kingdom. Lou continues to inform and inspire me ahead of our trip. His enthusiasm is contagious in a good way. Keep up the great work. And that is from Stuart in Birmingham in the United Kingdom. Again, just search for WDW Radio and Apple Podcasts or go to wdwradio.com/iTunes for a direct link and instructions on how to do it. And finally, most importantly, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean it when I say that I love you. I appreciate you, even if I've never met you, because you have done so much for me just by virtue of your listening. I know how valuable your time is, and I hope that in exchange, the show has made you happier, maybe inspired you to be better, maybe you learned something new. As we step into November, it's a month of Thanksgiving and giving thanks. I am thankful all the time, and I am thankful to you and for you. It is because of you that I choose the good, that I find the good in everything and everybody that I encounter, and I hope that you do that as well. I hope that you be the good, not just for yourself, but for other people, and give to others with no expectation of anything in return. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you so, so very much. If there's anything I could ever do for you, please just reach out to me and let me know. I hope to see and talk to you on Wednesday during the live show. So until next time, see ya.
Hi, everybody. It's Elizabeth from Massachusetts. Just listened to the most recent episode, or maybe it was the one before. Now I'm getting them confused. Anyway, one of them was about the new Steakhouse 71, which I am now dying to go to. I love nothing more than great comfort food in a fancier environment. So I am looking forward to seeing the Contemporary in all its new glory soon. Also, since the episode about Roy Disney, who I think this was such a nice episode, and I think it was good to shine some light on him as the person and character who really did make all the dreams come true, and I think he never gets enough credit. So thank you for shining some light on him as an individual. He's definitely, not talked about enough, and I liked how you mentioned where you can find him in the parks and everything. So anyway, I hope everyone is surviving here in the Northeast, that it is super rainy and cold, and it feels like, just not summer anymore, and it's gross. But anyway, hope everyone that's not up here is enjoying their weather in some way, shape, or form. And hope everyone's having a magical day. Make someone's day magical. Be magical, spread magic, and I will talk to you all real soon. Bye, guys.